Okay, YouTube, let's clear these weapons really quickly here. One of the things I want to say is, doesn't matter how many firearms you have on the table, don't ever say, I have all these firearms on the table and I've already cleared them. You want to clear them for the general public because they're watching your videos and they copy and mirror everything you do, especially new shooters. So the excuse of saying, well, I've got these 5 or 6 firearms, but I'm not going to clear them because I've already checked them, is total nonsense. Because of the fact that 1 minute of safety could save a lifetime of injuries. So you want to make sure that you're in the public eye, that you're doing the right thing, and that people can learn from you the proper way, and also be safe online. That's one of the reasons why Google doesn't like firearms online. There's a lot of guys that don't know what they're doing. You might be a firearms instructor, you might be a police officer. I don't care how many years you've got in your profession. If you don't check that firearm on video, you're doing the wrong thing. You're just wrong. That's all I have to say about that. So, what we want to get to here, the subject is slide stop or slide release. The thing is that the slide stop, or aka slide release, have dual functions, okay? Now, if I took this claw hammer and I asked you guys, okay, is this a hammer or is it a nail puller? Well, it could be both. It's got dual purpose. So one guy says it's a hammer, another guy says it's a nail puller. So why not just meet in the middle and call it a hammer or nail puller? It's the same thing. It does the same thing. It's got two functions. So the argument online, whether it's a slide stop or whether it's a slide release, it doesn't matter. When the slide is in the stop position, it's holding the slide. That's one function. When you pull down on it, it releases it. So it releases it and it stops it. Okay, so there's enough of that. Now, the other thing is that some guns, it's much easier to hit the slide stop, slide release than other firearms, which means that in a bad situation, you might not be able to hit it, and you might be better doing your overhand or your slingshot, depending on the situation. So I'm going to show you 3 firearms here where there's differences in all 3 of them. So here's the Glock 20, and we're going to take out the magazine, and we're going to make sure that the chamber is clear, and it is. The Glock 20, sometimes people will add an extension on here so that they can hit that much easier. Notice that if you're a new shooter, you might miss that because you have to know where it is and you have to push your thumb into it on the top to get to it. So although you can use this, for some people it might be more convenient to just overhand or slingshot. But here's the thing, when you're loading a magazine in, okay, you don't want to be in this position going like this or slingshotting it. You always want the firearm to be facing towards the threat, and then do this or slingshot it. Because why would you do something like this with the gun at an angle? Okay, that's an extra step right there. So now I've chambered around, okay? Now I've chambered around, but look where the muzzle is. It's not facing towards my enemy. Tenths of a second matter. So we have to remember that. Tenths of a second matter. So when you're changing your magazine, even though it takes a little bit longer, you're going to be pointing the weapon towards the target, towards the threat. So there's the Glock. The Burst of Thunder now this is different. This one has a big slide stop, slide release right here so that you can actually hit it. And the reason why this is better is because of the fact that when you overhand it, notice you don't have much room to overhand it, and it can cut you right here. And in some pistols, you can actually put the pistol on safe or move the safety decocker, okay? So going like this or slingshotting even, you can get cut right under here. So sometimes it's easier just to hit this. Now you should practice both, but when you're in a bad situation, in a combat situation where you have to defend yourself, you can just hit that. Okay, so there's the Burst of Thunder. So that's one of the reasons why slingshot and overhand is much more difficult with the Burst of Thunder, especially for new people. The way you can tell how a gun is as far as ease of use is you give it to a new person. And if a new person shows that they can't handle this gun, it means that it's more for a professional. It's more for experienced guys like us that have tried every firearm, slingshot, overhand, and slide release. We do all three. So, and then this one, you'll notice this Budapest 32 here, which is kind of a knockoff of the Walther PP. So check the chamber, check the mag well on this one. And we'll go back to the Burrs of Thunder just to make sure we have that all checked. And there you go. So on this one now, this is dependent on the magazine to work with the slide, to stop the slide. So to release it, notice that I don't have any button to release it, okay? I don't have a physical part where I can just, hit the slide, stop, slide, release, and it'll go forward, okay? This is the magazine button here. But the thing is that with a pistol like this now, you have to do it manual. But once again, just like the Burrs of Thunder, notice I don't have much to do a slingshot, okay? I could be covering the ejection port. Or overhand or slingshot, whatever. And there's nothing to get the slide to come forward. So what I do is I put my finger on the end of here because the surfaces are so slippery and it's so jagged over here. I find it easier to just go like this. Put your finger on the end of the barrel here. Notice it's not at the end of the muzzle. And what you're going to do is you're going to push this way with this hand and push this way with this hand. And then you're just going to let her go like that. Now you're chambered. So that's what you do with this thing. Because doing this in an emergency slingshot or overhand could be trouble for some people that don't have that experience using this kind of weapon. So anyway, what we'll do with this one is we'll open it up so it matches the others. So anyway, let's talk about the disadvantages and advantages of hitting the slide release instead of doing your typical slingshot overhand. Okay, here's a disadvantage. Sometimes what happens, and this is with police officers that were in an Israeli training event where this Israeli trainer asked a lot of police officers, have you ever did something like this? Have you ever put a magazine in but hit the slide stop, slide release before the magazine went in? Nobody knows because it happens so fast in a gunfight. You don't know if you're chambered right now or not. You might be chambered. You might not be chambered. So to fix that, there's a couple of things that a person has to understand. The magazine has to be seated and go in first, okay? That's number one. But like I said, there's some people in a dangerous situation that might not fully seat it and might hit the slide stop, slide release. So in some cases, maybe it is better for some to put the magazine in first and do an overhand or a slingshot. Or since you've got your right hand on the pistol and the magazine is already fully inserted, then you can hit it here with your left hand. And that's what they showed. But notice that the pistol is always going to be facing towards the threat, towards the target. Whether you're doing overhand, whether you're doing slingshot, or slide stop, slide release, you don't want to be doing something like this with your overhand or your slingshot. Because now, when I'm chambered, now I've got to point towards the target, towards the enemy. Whereas if I would just left the pistol here and did my magazine change, I would have been facing towards the enemy, towards the threat. Now, most private citizen defense situations, like on John Correa's channel, where he did some research, shown that very rarely or hardly ever will a person need to do a mag change in a gunfight. Now, we do change mags and we do practice changing mags, but the thing is that it's very rare that a person, a private citizen, is going to have to change magazines in a gunfight. Police, all the time. but we're not police, okay? A lot of us are private citizens, and we have to understand that there's a difference between law enforcement and the private citizen in the way we do things and the experiences that we have day to day. So when you take that into consideration, you don't have to worry a whole lot about mag changes, but you should practice them. You have to practice that motor skill anyway so you can do it. But if you're just doing mag changes all the time, constantly, day in, day out, and that's all you think about is changing mags, you're not really spending time shooting and doing fast follow-up shots and stuff like that. So get good mags, learn to trust your mags. Most gunfights, you're never going to need a second mag, but we train to load our spare magazine, and you should always have a spare magazine with you anyway. Why wouldn't you? I mean, there's places where you can carry a spare magazine. So anyway, so there's that. Now we're going to talk about some pistols. There's a certain thing that happens. We'll use the Glock, I guess, again for this. Some, I don't know, Smith & Wesson or some other types of guns, what you'll see happen on some guns is what'll happen is just the force from the magazine going in itself will cause the slide to come forward. And some guns are like that, where you just slam her in and that slide comes forward. You don't even have to hit anything, okay? Now, when the slide comes forward and you notice you can't chamber around, or you're having trouble with your pistol chambering around when you hit the slide stop, slide release, it probably doesn't have enough tension from the spring. Because notice that if I was going to chamber around with extra tension from the spring, notice that, look at all that distance I got. So all that distance could be force that could put the cartridge into the chamber. So sometimes with some pistols, if you're using the slide stop, slide release, and you don't get a round feed, sometimes it is better going overhand or slingshot, because you get that extra spring tension that can come forward, pick up that round, and put it in the chamber. So anyway, that's another situation right there. So, and once again, some pistols where you just slap the magazine and the slide racks around in. But also you have to remember that the same thing could happen too. You could have the magazine almost all the way to the top, and then the slide can prematurely come forward, not chambering around. So you want to make sure that that you practice always with your pistol. You want to practice slide stop, slide release. You want to practice overhand. You want to practice slingshot, and maybe the frontal. You can practice that too, and just choose one that you think you're going to use. So anyway, here are some differences, okay? People are saying, oh, you need to hit the slide stop, slide release all the time, right? Which isn't true, because we can see here that it isn't always necessary, or it isn't always going to work with all pistols. Every pistol's different. Every pistol's different, so you have to understand that. So whether a person says use the slide stop or, overhand, slingshot, or frontal, whatever you want to do. So them kind of things, you have to understand that it depends on the pistol and it depends on the person and their skill level. So if we took the skill levels, we'll find that this one is the most difficult, and then the Bursa, and then our no. What I mean is, for overhand and slingshot, the most difficult would be this one, and then the Bursa, and then the Glock for overhand and slingshot. But when it comes to slide stop, slide release, this one is better, okay? Then the Glock, and then this one, because this one, you don't have that option. So this is why I'm using these three pistols, is because one of them, it just sticks out at you, and it gives it to you so you can let that slide come home. One of them is recessed, but you have to kind of feel for it and get it. And the other one is magazine dependent. Magazine dependent, and it's dependent on your overhand slingshot or as I told you, because it's slippery, you're going to have to do a frontal type getting around in the chamber, that frontal type. And I'll show you it once more. It's really not too bad, actually, because you're not touching the end of the muzzle here. So you just kind of go like that. And I've had rounds feed all the time doing it that way, so I've never had a problem with it. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so what we learned from this is not all handguns you should use the slide stop, slide release. Not all handguns you should use slingshot, overhand, or frontal. Okay, and then the final argument is it called the slide stop or the slide release? Okay, is it a claw hammer? Okay, or is it a nail puller? Well, it's both. It's got dual purpose, so it's not useful arguing about what it's called. Okay, I call it a slide stop, but I call it a slide release when I hit it. So it's both. All right, so thank you very much for watching the video, you guys.